For years, in the quiet woods of Michigan, a man lived a rather ordinary life. A life filled with family, friends, work, the day-to-day things you and I both know so well. But there was something else. Something he couldn't quite forget. You see, this man had seen something. Not in a movie, not in a dream, but with his own eyes. Something tall, something massive, something covered in hair. Is something that, if he told most people, would earn him laughter instead of belief. So he kept it quiet for a while. But that sighting, that sound, those moments when he knew he wasn't alone in the Michigan woods, they stayed with him. They nagged at him. Until one day he decided silence wasn't enough. Instead of hiding it away, he turned on a camera, he opened a microphone, and he began to talk. First a little, then a lot, about Bigfoot, about cryptids, about the paranormal, and about anyone else out there who had seen what the rest of the world said wasn't real. And do you know what happened? People listened. They listened because they too had stories. Stories of ghosts in their homes, lights in their skies, creatures in their backyards. People who were laughed at too, but with him, they weren't laughed at anymore. He became something else, a host, an interviewer, a storyteller. Now, he wasn't just a man who once saw a giant in the trees. 3 live shows a week. A podcast, Brunch with Bigfoot, and hundreds of videos, thousands of listeners. Thousands who no longer felt so alone. And when the lights go on in his Michigan studio, when the camera shines, another guest calls in from another corner of the world, he's no longer just a witness. He is the voice for all those who whisper, "I've seen it too." So today, when you hear a man from Michigan speaking boldly about Bigfoot, about UFOs, about ghosts, about mysteries the world isn't ready to explain, you remember that it all began not with fame, not with microphones, not with an audience, but with one man standing quietly in the woods, looking at something the world says doesn't exist. And now you know the beginning of the story. It belongs to a man known as Bigfoot Michigan Rob.
It always helps when I add myself to the stage. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon to you. Of course, I am BMR. This is Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Thanks to everybody for coming on in this afternoon and taking your time out of your busy schedules to join me. I got a great show lined up for you. Darcy Weir, filmmaker, documentarian, joins the show. I'll be bringing him up shortly. Thanks to Darcy. Thanks to all of you for coming on in. If you are new here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. The Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube as well. Texas Front Porch across the board. You know who we are. Thank you for coming on. Hit that like button, everybody. It helps promote YouTube, the channel, the algorithms. There's all algorithms these days. And of course, everybody, I want to thank everybody for buying my books found on Amazon. Bigfoot Michigan Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters Book 1 and Book 2. Simply type Bigfoot Michigan Rob in your Amazon browser, and both the books will pull up. If you bought the book, please leave a review. It does help promote book sales. So thanks for that to everybody out there. What else we have going on? That's really about it as far as that goes. One other thought that I had last Tuesday, if you didn't see the show I did with MD Selig, it was a fascinating show. We talked about reptilians controlling the planets. It was very interesting, in-depth discussion with MD. Go check that one out. That was this past Tuesday. Go check that out. So thanks to everybody for coming on in. Don't forget the super chat's open, a great way to help support what we all do around here, as well as you, mateys. Join today, join the many, join the few. You can become a BMR pirate. That's right. What you get, well, here's what you get. A good old picture of BMR sporting a bandana in your chat room next to your name. How about that? Thanks to y'all for coming on in. I see Cowboy Diane Boss, Keith from Michigan, Andres, a few others, like Gary Spikes, High Pops, Danny Staten. A whole bunch of you are coming on in. Eloria, hello, Eloria. If you're not chatting, I can't give you a shout out. Hey, Chris, what's up, Chris Reagans? Digger Dog, hello, Digger Dog. Earlston's here. A bunch of you piling on in already. I appreciate you guys. If I didn't mention your name or give you a shout out, because you're not chatting right now. I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. So with that being said, I'm going to bring up my awesome guest. It's Darcy Weir. He's a documentary filmmaker over the past 2 decades has explored some of the most intriguing and thought-provoking subjects of our time, including UFOs, cryptids, and Bitcoin. With more than 15 feature-length documentaries available on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and Apple, his work continues to shed new light on these mysteries and make them more accessible to the general public. And I've got all of Darcy's links posted at the bottom of the description of this show. And thanks so much for that. What do I got here? I got somebody popped up. Hey, Keith. Keith, great way to start today. $5. No walking the plank today. Thank you, Keith, from Michigan. Donations always appreciated, never expected. Thank you, Keith, from Michigan. You are awesome. So with that said, I'm going to bring up Mr. Weir. Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you so much for coming on. I know last year I tried to get you on, and you know how life goes. So I appreciate you coming on and spending your busy day with me and our audience.
Hey, you bet. Happy to be here. Always down to talk about Bigfoot and UFOs.
Yeah, so that's what I do. You know, I kind of talk about all the things, and of course, our audience loves all these subjects. And so I read off your quick bio, fascinating, awesome, extensive bio. But let me ask you, the first thing I like to ask people for the first time, anyways, when they come on the show, how did you get involved in filmmaking and all this phenomenon?
Well, it was a long journey, but it started initially with the intent to make films. I went to university and a technical film school in video, studied video production, right from conception to filming to editing. And then I went to university, did a BA in sociology and film. And at university, when you're studying sociology, especially when I was going through, I don't know how much that's changed now, but you get exposed to documentaries because often, especially back then, Noam Chomsky was this sociologist that studied the patterns of human groups and the social dynamic of people, sort of group psychology, so to speak. And there's many documentaries that you see by Noam Chomsky and other, thought-provoking sociologists of the day. So I guess in the back of my head, I figured this is a type of filmmaking too. And, fast forward to 2012, I published my very first documentary, just very independently. I interviewed a bunch of people, and I built the story around Phil Schneider, a guy who basically said he worked on underground bases and got into a altercation with aliens and lost his fingers and was badly hurt. And he discovered the secrecy surrounding the New World Order and the UFO cover-up. And I was deeply intrigued by his story, so that's why I originally published that documentary just to YouTube in 2012, March of 2012. And that racked up quickly, like almost 4 million views.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
I could do it. And I waited about 4 years from then to publish my second one. And my second documentary was called The Unwanted Sasquatch. And it was about the history of the Bigfoot / Sasquatch topic across North America. And originally I thought I was crazy by thinking that there was something to the whole UFO subject. And I thought people who believe in like Bigfoot and Sasquatch must be even crazier than me.
Right.
You know, I got
I hear you.
I got exposed to the facts, let's say, and that's why I decided to make a serious expose on that and the people that were hunting this cryptid.
That's, you brought up, this show, from what you have just mentioned, can go all over the place. You mentioned something about the New World Order. I had a guest on Tuesday, and that's kind of where the show ended up going with the reptilians. That was his big thing. He thinks that our planet is being controlled by reptilians. It was MD Selig. It was fascinating that with the Illuminati and all these oligarchies, these people that nobody on our planet knows about except for the elites, right? Do you think there's any basis behind that? Do you think that the New World Order has been in place and they're looking to take over and make this a one organization to take over the planet? And do you think that maybe aliens are involved? Do you think that we're currently talking with them now or have contracts with them?
So that's all rumor and speculation, and
Certainly.
really, I'd say the grandfather of that mass speculation on reptilians running the planet was David Icke. In 1999, right at the turn of the millennium, he was publishing his groundbreaking book on, the fact, his opinion stated as fact, truth through proclamation, that the royal family and other ancient, very powerful families around the world were actually reptilian descendants from a Draco constellation. Right. That whole thing. There's no proof. And I think what happens is we anthropomorphize ideas and tropes that we consider to be sort of evil or like mythology into real living things. And the whole Draco reptilian sort of conspiracy thing is a perfect example of that. I mean, we have a reptilian brain. We are very instinctual and selfish with that part of our human brain mechanism. Right. And people will take that quite literally and say, well, actually, there's a reptilian race that have enslaved humanity and kept us on this prison planet. I think also, part of your question was, is there this one world government? There's no proof of that because, you look at the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, multiple flashpoints right now, maybe a civil war in the United States, and then all the other things that are going on around the planet. It doesn't seem like there's one rule, right? There's no order. That's all chaos. Yes. And it's all competing interests and competing ideals. You've got a major religion, Islam, that has a powerful foothold in the world. You've got the Russian, society that's kind of trying to take over Eastern Europe right now. Again, these are all competing interests. And then you've got the West, which is predominantly like Christian and just capitalist. And, you know, that includes the US and the UK, but now the US and UK are kind of at odds with each other, right? So to me, that right there proves that there's no organization behind the claim that there's a one world government. It looks more like chaos and multiple competing ideals, economies, theologies, and interests.
I think that's a great point. I tend to agree with you on that. At this point, I think there's people out there that want to control us, and that could be our own personal government. But you mentioned something that's always fascinating to me when everybody bandies about and says this word, you know, there's no proof. Do you think that the proof or the evidence has to come? Is that something that needs to be scientifically proven to you? And the reason I ask is this: I talk to lots of people every day, and you in the business that you're in your career, you talk to people that have been abducted by aliens. We talk to people that have had encounters with Sasquatch. I personally have seen one. Do you think that with these stories that we get, these people that we interview, you cannot prove anything? I don't judge a person when they tell me a story or an encounter, and we cannot scientifically classify it as evidence. But what's your thoughts about all of these? I mean, I have a podcast. There's many podcasts, talk shows. People are seeing things, aren't they? And I can't believe everybody's making this stuff up.
Yeah. So do I believe that there might be a non-human intelligence present here?
Yes.
Yes. Could some of those been identified as looking reptilian-like? Yes. Some people say that they've seen what looks like a gray, but when they got a good close-up view of their skin, the skin seems scaly, you know? So I think people, abductees or experiencers, contactees that have had these experiences may extrapolate that with what they've recognized in science fiction. You know, back in the 1960s, we had Captain Kirk fighting a reptilian on TV. So this is part of the public psyche, you know, and that's where somebody can immediately identify it with being, oh, maybe I was abducted by a reptilian. You know what I mean? So to your question, I think there's too many witness accounts that seem credible of a non-human intelligence, whether that's Travis Walton or Betty and Barney Hill, or, you know, it just the list goes on. But like the famous cases where there's multiple witnesses and the Air Force or the Navy gets involved, or, you know, all kinds of intelligence and military agencies that are interested in this. And then you've got J. Allen Hynek getting involved with the Pascagoula 1973 abduction incident that involved Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker in the Mississippi area, the Pascagoula River. It would lead one to think, when you hear him say, you know, at this point, Project Blue Book was defunct. It was over. Mm-hmm. And when he went with his press release saying that he believed the men, Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker, were telling the truth about what happened to them. And then he went on to say, we had many different cases that seemed just like this during the Project Blue Book days. Mm-hmm. That makes you wonder, how many cases out there were thrown away or ignored to be included publicly, officially with the study? I think this is a more common occurrence than people will ever admit to, and especially the powers that be. But, you know, we have a discussion of this happening on Capitol Hill in Congress right now, and they're, drafting up legislation about strange pregnancies from abductees and all kinds of wild things. And that makes me think, okay, there might be something here.
I wasn't going to go here until you just brought this up, and I've got to tell you this. I'm going to give the Reader's Digest form of this, and I want your take on this. I spoke with this lady a year and a half or so ago, and I literally, first we started out as a casual email. She had emailed me because I advertised my email on the channel. If you have an encounter story or what have you, send it in. And then I had done a show about UFO abductees. And so this lady sends me an email. I'm not going to give out her name. We spoke. I got in touch with her. We spoke on the phone for, geez, Darcy, it had to have been 2.5, 3 hours. And she told me her story. And really briefly how this went on. And this kind of is going to kind of segue into the psychic phenomenon, the ESP and things that which is in your latest documentary, I believe. She was telling about as a young child, 5 or 6 years old, she was just having these dreams about being not on a planet. She didn't know at the time where she was, but she was in like a cube and surrounded. And she told me about like these 3 alien grays. Dreaming as a young child, she would get up every day, go to her mother, her father, crying. And of course, like most parents do, you're having a nightmare. Well, these continued on throughout her life. It was always the same dream. And then as the dreams, they got more vivid. And then she realized she was, in her mind, on a spacecraft. And she says they were like the alien grays, a short one, a taller one, 3 different sizes. And then when she hit puberty, in this dream, now the first other dreams was just her there. She was being observed. She noticed at the end of, she was on like a gurney, she said. It was a very cold feeling to her backside. And there was, as she was explaining to me, an alien gray with some sort of a probe or an apparatus, a tool. And she knew that it was going toward her private area. And this is, again, at puberty. And this went on and on. And so one night as she got older, now she's in her mid-20s, and during this time, she noticed these nodes or these nodules on the back of her neck. She went to the doctors, and they couldn't explain it. Not cancerous. They didn't want to mess with it because it was too close to her vertebrae in her back, her spinal cord. And she wondered what it was, so she grew her hair long to cover them. And then one night in her bed, not a dream, an image of an alien gray appeared to her and telepathically told her that you're going to meet your hybrid child as we have been taking you all these years. And then this alien, this gray, it disappeared. And again, she didn't know what to do about this. And I must say, her life during all these dreams and all of these experiences she had over the years, she got divorced. Her 2 beautiful daughters abandoned her, and she couldn't hold a job. I felt so bad for this woman, Darcy. I talked to her ad nauseum, and my heart went out to her. So one day she is, and she always remembered, one day she is in a restaurant, and she sees this beautiful woman adjacent to her in a restaurant, beautiful blonde hair and a very pale but pure skin. And it reminded her of her 2 daughters. And she had remembered that during her dreams and by this visitation that this alien gray says you had hybrid children and said you will meet one of them one day. So she follows this woman gets up and she goes into the bathroom of this restaurant. So this woman follows her in there. And she follows her into the stall of the bathroom. The young lady goes in, sits in the far end. And she's waiting. She wants to confront this woman. She just had to ask her. She had this premonition, this thought process. the woman doesn't come out of the stall. She looks under the stall and there's nobody in there. She goes back out to the restaurant where the woman was sitting. The place settings was all redone and everything. She's gone. Runs out in the parking lot. And so she's like, oh my Lord, I think this might have been what these dreams and these visitations I've been getting about. That very night, the same alien Grace, she says, returned to her end of her bed and says, we're taking you tonight back to the craft. As she's telling me, you're going to meet your child. So she's back on this craft as she's explaining to me. And all of a sudden, she was not laying on the table this time, Darcy. She's sitting upward, and appearing out of this cube she's in is that woman that appeared to her and told her she was her hybrid child. And she'd been taken all these years, which was once explained. And she said the nodules on the back of your neck are the 12 that we took. And I'm the only one that survived. And she's, Rob, what do you think? Can you explain this? And I'm like, this is above my pay grade. I believe you. And, I'll get back with you. And, and I was just at a loss. I'm sorry I took up so much of your time, Darcy, but what's your take on that?
No, I mean, I'm completely open to
sure.
to broadening the conversation with your previous experiencer's story.
Yeah.
Look, like Dr. John Mack, who was a Harvard psychologist that took abductee research very seriously. You also have Dr. David Jacobs, same deal. He collected a massive library of witness testimony. Near the end of John Mack's career in researching the abductee and experiencer phenomenon, just before he died, he was working with David Jacobs, and their main thesis was that there was this hybrid program, this like strange biological modification and abductee hybrid baby thing happening. And I'm open to it. I want to research it more. I don't know enough to fully say everything, but even in the docu-series that I produced, which it's actually free on YouTube Movies if people want to go check it out there.
Which one is that?
Pascagoula 73.
Okay.
Which is about Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker. These gentlemen were abducted on October 11th, 1973. And then you have recently a couple, Jerry and Maria Blair, who stated that they were actually abducted the same night just across the river. I just dropped the link in the chat there if people want to watch it. It's completely free. 4-part docu-series. And when we interviewed Maria Blair in her abduction hypnosis regression, she basically states that she believes they were taking eggs from her and that kind of reproductive material, and that when she asked why, they were saying for a hybrid program. So I think it's something people should investigate further. I have a friend who's also a filmmaker, Dean Aliotto, who's actually working on something, I think, about that. So I don't know when it'll be out, but should be pretty interesting. I will say that if you look at the free study, you can Google FREE. This was put together by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo astronaut from the 14th mission, one of the few men to publicly be said to land on the moon and come back to Earth. He conducted the free study through his institute, and there's over 3,000 witnesses that give their testimony on different non-human experiences that they had. And I think the proof is out there that something's going on. If that many people in just that study have been scrutinized to some degree, seem to be mentally sane, not going through some kind of psychotic episode, and they recall something like this happening to them.
I just find it fascinating, and again, we all get these, and I think these things happen to folks. Certainly, you referenced a couple of the big time with Travis Walton. We've all heard that ad nauseum. And reverting back, your latest documentary, you talked about the psychic. It's called what's the psychic phenomenon with ESP and revolving around this non-human intelligence. Kind of relating to what my story was about this young lady I spoke with. Do you think that, why don't you talk a little bit about this documentary? I find it fascinating that now this woman, she had vivid dreams, and then she actually thinks she had an actual experience or encounter a life outside of the dream state. Now the ESP, that's and that dates way back to like the Cold War, right? And that's where that was kind of the psyops was started, right? I think during the Cold War. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you're talking about MK Ultra, that was a totally different individual that was involved with that, a German scientist. But the remote viewing, the controlled study of psychic abilities to view something with your mind's eye at a great distance. For example, these remote viewers, these basically military and intelligence hired psychics, were given a target like a manufacturing or a military site in Russia. And when they were given that target, it was just a coordinates. They would psychically look at that coordinates and they would illustrate what they saw. And oftentimes, without being pre-exposed to what exactly that target was, they would illustrate exactly what it was or draw out something very, very close. And I think psychics have been used in law enforcement to solve crimes to some degree throughout history. If you think about that and extrapolate it, if an intelligence or military apparatus is using this as a tool, it must be real. And there's documented evidence from those days that it is. In our documentary, we kind of follow that recent Western history of using the psychic tool and then identifying that there's crossover between the UFO world and the history of ufology and those kind of encounters with the psychic realm, and how people seem to be going after these psychic targets that are UFO related or highly anomalous. And the military and intelligence had been interested in that back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I think it's never stopped. I think it's still a tool that's used by the same groups, but privately and possibly in-house. And, you know, there's perfect example of that. If you look at Chris Ramsey has the Area 52 Investigations YouTube channel, and he did a whole journey, a documentary series on his journey becoming a remote viewing psychic or experimenting with it, let's say. He was, you know, he was pretty not great at it, but he had some ability to discern a target psychically. But he was being taught by his friend Nelson, who's actually the national memory champion in the world. And Nelson, supposedly, after he'd won those competitions so many times, he'd caught the interest of the CIA, and they dispatched somebody to see if he was interested in being trained in remote viewing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that the intelligence and militaries of the world, they want the most skilled psychics at their disposal. They don't want them roaming free and becoming Russian agents or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So in other words, you do believe that people do perform remote viewing. It's a skill. It's been trained to folks that are out there in the field. And what would be the difference then? Because I know you talk about the ESP. Was that extra
sensory perception?
So are they kind of the same? Do they work hand in hand? If you can do remote viewing, can you perform ESP, or is it two separate traits or skills?
Well, ESP is the umbrella description of somebody that's performing a psychic ability. Okay. Remote viewing was coined by Ingo Swann, who was one of the head psychics under Project Stargate with Russ Targ and Hal Puthoff's organization. But remote viewing is the controlled study. It's the tool that has a methodology to push a psychic down a sort of information filter in order to annotate and describe what they're looking at with their mind's eye. It's a more scientific approach to a psychic study. And that's why I liked it, because I want to go towards where the facts are with my docs and stuff, right?
Yes.
There are other people that demonstrate ESP, extrasensory perception and abilities, and they might not be considered a remote viewer because they haven't had the training and practice under a remote viewing school or study. Those types of people could be anywhere on the spectrum of psychic. So, this guy, Rupert Sheldrake, who's a professor in the UK, he published a few different books on psychic studies. And one of them, he just talked about how there seemed to be this innate ability in most people that seems instinctual, in which we know when somebody has their gaze on us. And that might be a fight or flight sort of reflex type thing, where if we were very primitive back in the day and we were in a open setting, if a predator was nearby and we didn't hear it or see it with our eyes, maybe, just maybe, this psychic ability allowed us to know when we were being watched, and we connected where it was and then started running, that type of thing. So for example, if you go to a mall and somebody is on the second floor of this mall looking down on the food court, and you've got your back completely turned to them, somehow you eventually realize you're being watched and you connect with their eyes. And sometimes you're out at a bar and there's an awkward moment where that type of thing happens and you connect and you both look away and the staring stops, that type of thing. This seems to be a very primitive psychic ability. And then you go on from that, and there's people that are mediums that say that they can communicate, with spirits or something beyond. And they can also read your past and read your future and things about your life that you haven't written down, published online, or given to them willingly. So there's all kinds of ESP that happens.
I think that's fascinating. And I also think, Ines, and I think everybody that's watching today, listening later, watching the replay, and I talk about this quite often too, about the, because I think that I've had some experiences in my lifetime, but yes, everybody here has felt the eyes on their back, and you turn around, you make that awkward eye contact, and and they know that you knew that you were watching them. It's just uncanny. I think that, do you think that all human beings, as you said, it's primitive, right? But we all have it. It's just about how open-minded you are and how and if you want to further enhance that skill. Is that something that we can enhance, do you believe? And apparently I think it's a yes, personally.
Well, I think if you look at Ed May, who kind of took over the study of remote viewing through the Stanford Research Institute, he looked at the correlation between people that say that they're psychic and what their innate ability is. And when they measured it, he kind of concluded that you can only learn up to what your natural ability is. So for myself, I would admit, I don't think I'm very psychic. I think I've had psychic moments in my life, possibly, right? I think everybody kind of has some kind of premonition or something that comes true in their life that they somehow found in their mind before it happens. This is a common occurrence. And for myself, I could probably only learn remote viewing up to that ability that I already innately have. But then there's other people who are increasingly psychic. And when they tap into that and learn up to their natural ability, they seem like masters compared to everybody else. And I'll give the example of Pat Price, who was one of the most highly psychic people in history under the Stargate program under Russell Targ's Stanford Research Institute program. And he was a police commissioner. He was an incredibly intelligent person that was able to solve crimes and stuff. And I guess he had an inkling he was psychic, so that's why he signed up for this program. And then he learned how to harness that ability even further. But if I went into the same program competing with Pat Price, there would be no comparison. So I couldn't really enhance beyond what my natural ability is. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me, and I get that. And I'm going to tell you something that might kind of blow your mind a little bit. People have told me this, and I don't like to brag about it because I don't think it's true. But there's a couple of my friends that I've been with for a long time in this business, podcasting and what, said I have some certain abilities, right? And I will tell you this, though, at a young age, I was able to sense people's intentions. One of the reasons why I was kind of successful in my career is because I just kind of knew ahead of time if a person was going to work out. Not so much in the corporate life when I first got out of college, but when I owned a bar for 13 years, every time I looked at a resume, the person never worked out. But if I had a 2-minute interview with somebody without looking at the resume, I could sum up whether or not they would work or not. And I just thought that was everybody could do that. But really, what was really something that really blew my mind was, and a lot of my friends and my family was, when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I know a lot of my audience has heard this before, but I'd like to have your take because it's very fascinating. There was this kid, Jimmy, that lived in my neighborhood. And Jimmy, for whatever reason, Darcy, I didn't like the kid. I just thought there was something weird and strange about him. And I, in fact, as a young boy, would tell my mom and dad not to allow Jimmy over because I didn't like him. And I told my mom and dad as a young kid, he was evil. My mom and dad said, "Where did you come up with that word?" And I was a young kid, right? I said, I don't want him playing with me or my brother, this, that, and the other. And they kind of blew it off. And so years went by, middle school, and he was in my school district. This kid, Jimmy, never liked him. I just got this bad feeling. My friends are like, "There's nothing wrong with Jimmy." High school, same thing. High school, we're playing soccer, and me and Jimmy, our bodies collided. We roll around on the field, and I got these images were presented in my mind, and I got this cold, chilling feeling about this Jimmy, and I pushed the kid away, and I ran away from him. I'm a senior in high school. I look like a little girl, and all my buddies are laughing at me. "Rob, why'd you run from Jimmy?" I said, and I ran, and I just left the field. I went to the locker room. My gym teacher said, "What's your problem?" I said, "Hey, listen, I don't want to get into it, but it was just Jimmy." Long story short, I go off to college. And again, my friends knew that my disdain for Jimmy, the weird feelings I had about Jimmy. My mom and dad thought I was just had it in for this guy. I go off to college. I come home. They're having a little get together celebration for my graduating from college. My mom and dad take me up to their bedroom. I'm like, oh, wow, this has got to be serious. Mom and dad's bedroom, right? You know that kid, Jimmy, that you always throughout your lifetime said there was something wrong with this kid, and you just said he was evil as a young boy? I go, yeah. I go, why are you bringing this up? It's, why talk about Jimmy? I graduated college. He murdered his grandmother. He's in prison. And I knew something was not, that's the most sensitive experience I've had. And I knew it. I just knew it. And yeah, so I think that what's your thought on that one? I just couldn't believe that. So I think I got something going on in my mind.
Well, I mean, there's two things that are at play there in my mind, right? Yeah. If you look at somebody like this Nelson guy that became the memory champ of the world multiple times over, what you're seeing there is his ability to memorize things, right? To record things in his mind. And there's something to do, the same area of your mind probably also produces pattern recognition, because you have those ideas, those images, those events, and those possibilities saved in your mind. When you see it in front of you, you recognize it. That pattern recognition allows you to state to yourself and to others, oh, I know what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
Because you've seen it before. So I think with your case, you'd never seen it before.
Right.
So that's where you start to lead somebody, you start to deduce that maybe that there's something psychic going on there, especially with a child who doesn't know the word evil, maybe has never heard it before, that type of thing. It can't be pattern recognition because it's like something new to you, but you've had this premonition that this person is going to do something bad. I'm scared of them, or I think something bad could happen to me or others. Now, if this later on in your life, if you run into him on the football field or something in gym, and you see that he's done things throughout those years since you were a little boy to now as an adolescent, then it becomes pattern recognition. Then it's like, okay, he's done some creepy stuff. He puts me off. I heard he's hurt other people or, put them in strange positions at the school. This guy's a creep. I think he's bad news, right? Yep. And we all have that. We all have that pattern recognition in our brains that allows us to identify those things. Yep. So maybe later on in life, you were just super creeped out and you just wanted nothing to do with that guy. But when you're a really young lad, that's probably where it's like more of a psychic thing, a more instinctual thing. Like your body is giving you this adverse reaction super young because you are recognizing in somebody something bad, but also it's coming from some ability that you don't even know you have.
It is odd that you bring that up. Jimmy, throughout the high school, grade school, there was nothing. He never did anything bad to people. That's why I was kind of the outcast. They thought that I was being a bully, and I never bullied the kid. I just wanted nothing to do with him. But you had said something, and I didn't put two and two together until years later. In my neighborhood, which Jimmy lived, we would ride our BMX bikes along this creek, and we set up a trail. Throughout the years, we forged this trail. And there was one afternoon, me and my buddies were racing on the BMX bikes. Again, down by a creek, it's surrounded by the woods. And we came across a horrific sight where there was 2 or 3, I think it was up to 3 cats, Darcy, that were hung in the trees and they were skinned, man. And
Pretty
oh,
cool.
it was horrible. Us young guys, we ran home and we told our parents. And I find out later in life, or not later in life, later maybe within months, because I never even knew where this Jimmy lived. But in that area, if you go up the ridge, the hill, into the surrounding community and backyards, Jimmy's house lined up to the area where we had found that atrocity.
So it's interesting that you say that, and something that psychologists have identified in people that exhibit psychopathic history.
Yeah.
The sort of sadistic behavior and the ability not to feel remorse for others, that includes animals. They tend to, at a young age, experiment with mutilation of animals, squirrels, cats, dogs, all kinds of things. So if you look at famous psychopaths, the pattern is that, let's say murderers that go on to kill people, over, let's say, serial killers, for example.
Right.
When you look at the study of their past lives when they were adolescents, teenagers, or tweenagers, family members and friends find that they did experiment by mutilating and killing animals. So, that's something to look out for in a psycho.
That is, and I can reference to some other. I think we all dabble in the same type of genre, but yeah, Dahmer and all these other ones, right? They did that at a young age. But getting off that kind of a little gruesome topic, But yeah, great topic though. I mean, and I thank you for helping me with that, because I always wondered about myself and that experience. And I've told this story time and time again, because it's something I'll never forget. And I had you on tonight, or this afternoon. So I just thought I'd run that by you, and thank you for that. Getting back to this non-human intelligence and the consciousness. So would you suggest that with what you're talking about in your documentary, that perhaps this is more a theory that UFO encounters are less about machines and maybe more about the mind-to-mind connection?
Well, I'm convinced that the human body is, mechanical in a biological way, but we're also kind of a mix between something non-mechanical. So let's say a field that's able to observe other fields and manipulate those fields. We know that through all kinds of studies that have been done in the past, where you have somebody observing an experiment, and when they observe the experiment, then the outcome gets immediately influenced just by the observation. When a wave, I can't remember what the study is, but somebody can help me out here. I've been talking too much, but
You're all right. Yes.
I think the field affecting other fields is that sort of like quantum science part of us, that our brain might be this kind of like quantum room temp computer. And then the mechanical side of us is that we live in this like 3D world, and we have to actually live by those laws to succeed, right? Yeah. To procreate, to, live healthy and thrive. When it comes to, what was your earlier question again? Sorry.
I was just talking about, we're talking about, UFOs or machines. I mean, do you think that these connections that people have is more of a conscious level?
Yeah. So I think consciousness is basically affected by that quantum world that we're just at the precipice of really understanding. that science realm that's really opening up. And I think consciousness is also connected to our physical, mechanical selves, what brain we have that we're born with and that we've fostered, right?
Yeah.
To success. Now we're also starting to meld with the mechanical world, right? We're at the precipice of the singularity. So we're going to have brain chip implementation through Elon Musk's company and others that are trying to explore that world. And that's like the whole mind to computer interface
Yes.
opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's possible that we do discover through that sort of technology the ability to identify psychic abilities further and harness them with technology.
Okay.
You know, what if we go through the singularity and other species, other intelligences out there in the stars have gone through the singularity as well, and that's why they're able to harness this mind-to-mind connection ability, because they've maybe they've used genetic modification strategies and CRISPR sort of technology in their own right to create a new organism out of their original organism. And that is the spacefaring, the star exploring, and extraterrestrial civilization that could be interfacing with us throughout time, right? They might have highly developed brains, or they might have technology implemented within their own bodies that allow them to accomplish certain feats. And we hear about that too in like crash craft retrieval investigations and studies that have been discussed throughout history, where, Philip J. Corso says we dissected, a body, and it seemed that the big black eye was actually partly a organic eye and partly a cybernetic enhancement, with the black part being almost like a lens for the being that was implemented into its body to allow it to see beyond the human perception, right? To see into other light spectrums and see, right into, who knows, maybe even electromagnetic spectrums that we can't perceive with our human brain or eyes, because we just have a limitation physically and mentally. So to me, I think there is going to be mechanical attached to the quantum sort of reality of our lives. And maybe, there's going to be a human 2.0 version in the future.
Maybe there isn't. And I know you've done documentaries on Bigfoot. We'll get into that in a minute. I got one other thing I'd like to get into. Thanks to everybody for coming on in. Hit that like button. Thanks to Keith for your awesome super chat, Darcy Weir. And by the way, Darcy's links are all here in my show notes. Click on, you can pull up all of his documentaries and where you can contact him. If anybody, any of the mods out there can find it, you can drop it for Darcy and myself as well. I can't get to it here, but thank you for that. But they're all there, Darcy, for you and everybody watching now and later. You mentioned something that I don't know about you and people watching or listening later. This artificial intelligence, okay, it's probably not alien. It's what we're doing ourselves, right, in the world. I'm kind of scared of that. I was doing a show on babies being with surrogate robot mothers, not a human being, a robot, and then we talk, and of course we all know about cloning, but all of these things where, you can buy yourself a robot and they look like a mechanical robot, but now they've got some of these things down to a science, which they look like damn near a human being, and they can almost, the more you speak with them, the more that these robots get to know what your conscience is, know what you like, what you dislike, and they almost become a companion. Do you think that with the advent of all this, and yes, I'm all for technology, the cell phone, hey, it's a hindrance, it's a burden, but it's something we all use every single day, and it helps us get through the day for most of us. Do you think because of the advent of all this that we're becoming less humanized as a civilization?
Well, I think the social phenomenon of an incel is on the rise because of things like the ability to sit at home, be on a computer or on your cell phone all day,
Yeah.
and not have to have this social interaction where we're talking openly with our mouths, looking at a person like you and I are doing, even though
Right.
it's virtual.
Right.
But people are less and less going out of their house and experiencing the world, and it's becoming more dangerous to go out socially just because there's all kinds of problems in the world right now. So I think what we knew as the norm to be human is changing, and the social psychology is going to change constantly from here on out. It's going to be the norm that, yes, AI companions will be our kids' friends. You know what I mean? You already have grown men that are abandoning dating apps to find a partner.
Yeah.
And instead they're talking to an ChatGPT girlfriend that they created.
I know.
This is on the rise, and it's because all kinds of things maybe as a result of that socially. You have the cost to have a real companion is higher. You got to take them on dates. You got to, woo them with gifts, and you have to. It actually is a higher investment cost personally and socially for you to make physical encounters with another human being, right? Because what if they have a virus? What if they are a psychopath? What if they've got some kind of issues themselves that drag you down mentally, and so on and so forth? Whereas a digital companion doesn't really have that baggage, unless it convinces you to commit suicide, which I heard is a thing.
Oh, see, there's all sorts of things.
Yeah. So there's going to be issues with that. And I think we're at this Wild West sort of present in terms of AI exploration and artificial intelligent companions. I don't have that because I think I need real social.
Yeah, I see.
That's encounters. It actually gives me that serotonin that I need, and gives me more self-worth, I guess, and value when I can have real physical and meaningful social conversations and encounters with another human being. But I do use AI to ask questions that I don't know about, know the correct answer to, or if I've got complications that I need to overcome with my filmmaking. Sometimes I use artificial intelligence to help me lead to a solution. So we're going to live in a mix between using AI and not using AI. And there's going to be a fear narrative that's pushed where you absolutely should not adopt AI. And then there's going to be, positives that come out of using AI. So I don't think, to me right now, the positives outweigh the negatives in terms of how I use it in my life. But, some people are looking for a happy ending, and you just got to figure out how to get there on your own.
I like that. But the AI companion for a female for me is not going to ever happen. I like you said, I need that physical, talking to a male, a female. You need friendship. You need socialization outside of picking up your phone. AI, again, I use it for information. If I need a quick, I use it a little more and more. I do find myself to find answers, come up with ideas for certain things, certain shows, even. And yeah, I think it's got a lot of great benefits. But when I start, and Keith in the chat room said, people are addicted to social media. That's all they do. And you had mentioned it. More and more people sit in their house. See, I can't sit in my house. I got to go out and be with people. I'm a people person. That'll never go away. I'm not going to talk to an imaginary, although highly advanced, intellectual, computerized being that can probably get on my level and speak with me. That's fine. Kind of eerie. Don't want it, So yeah, I think that there's pros, there's cons, but I can see people having these human-like robots walking around their house, and you become a slave to your house. You become a slave to yourself, right? Kind of like a loner. And you made some great points with what's happening in the world. Every day I wake up, something's gone on. Something horrific has happened in my city, your city, all of our cities, which makes you scared, especially if you have little kids, right? With the schools and all these shootings. So I get it. But at the same time, I need humanity to me is probably going to be a thing of the past, maybe in 50 years, which to me is a scary thought.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what your definition of humanity is, and that might be changing over the next 50 years, especially when we're like starting to really meld with technology. And like I said, there's going to be people that leave that opportunity behind and don't want to use AI tools out of fear and wanting to stay in a lifestyle that's what they're comfortable with, which is like, off the grid or whatever.
Yeah,
that's fine. But there are going to be people that have certain advantages of embracing AI in certain ways. It is a tool. It is a computer mind that you're harnessing to go to an outcome that you want with your own mind.
Yeah.
And it just depends on how you use it and how you accomplish what you want. There's the fear narrative, and then there's the like sort of more, reduced fear narrative that if society is going that way, if you completely push away from that, there's going to be this divide in people. Yeah. There's going to be those that have that, and then the have-nots in that sort of realm. And I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And again, I speak that way. I'm in my 50s, and I know how I've been throughout my life. But let's face facts with facts. Kids that have been born today, they're being born today, or maybe some of these 5, 6, 7-year-olds growing up, that's all they know is to be technology. When a child born today, when they go off to college, it's all going to be high tech. The things that we're talking about today is just going to be so ancient to them. Just like kids today don't even know how to use a rotary dial phone, right? They don't know what it's like not to have a cell phone. They don't know what it's like to wait at the phone for your friends to call you when all I can do is pick up my phone and find them, literally.
Yeah. Remember the flip phone or the BlackBerry?
I remember that.
Like those were the thing when I was growing up.
The BlackBerry was badass, right? The BlackBerry.
Sooner or later we're gonna have like wearable. The Apple. What are those headsets? Like that technology is gonna get smaller and smaller, and maybe you won't have to wear something. You'll just put on like a contact lens or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But I will tell you this, which was so cool. I did that. I put on the headgear for the artificial intelligence for the, and I was, I don't know if it's called, it's an AI product. My buddy has an Oculus. And I was wearing that, and we put in a
That's
program.
The VR headset, right?
Yeah. And they're more advanced now. And I just did this like 2 years ago. and we put in the program where I went into the ocean, into a shark cage with sharks right in the ocean. And I must tell you, I know it wasn't real, but it was the closest thing that I'll ever get to going in a shark cage because it was so real. For an instant, I was lost. Like, wow, this is like happening. I mean, anybody, you got to try that out. Because you can do anything with these things, going in outer space, being in the ocean. I almost bought myself one because I loved it so much. But yeah,
I think
cool
like
stuff.
that technology is only going to get better and better. And artificial intelligence is here to stay.
It's not going anywhere.
It's just going to be more and more advanced. And every generation looks down on the newer generation and doesn't understand things about them. Right. So it's like when I was growing up, there was the grunge like sort of movement in alternative music. And the classic rock guys were like, what the F is that? Right. And then, hip hop was completely alien to the people from Motown and soul days. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And now we got like house music. That's like an evolution of disco. And there's always going to be a group that comes up underneath us and they're doing things that seem alien to us. And we go, back in my day, you know what I mean?
I know you sound so old. Back in my
we always end up sounding like our grandparents, right? But I think the idea there is also extrapolate that. What if the AI and alien phenomenon, what if the alien non-human intelligence phenomenon is us from the future?
I say that all the time. Yeah,
what if that one? Yeah. What if it's like, us human 3.0 or 4.0 that have just completely given up our sexual organs, that have a society that's 3D printed, and we're going back on the timeline to take a look at what we once were.
Yeah, that's a great point. I talked about us as humans from the aliens from the future and the 3D printing back even when I got out of Ford Motor Company a long time ago, and we were just on the cusp of, we actually had and this is how technology was, but they don't release it. We built 3D parts for cars. It was amazing. Now we never used them. I mean, that was in our laboratory, in our engineering and tech rooms. We were working with this many years ago, which was fascinating. But this is fascinating stuff. Let's for the last few minutes of the show here, you've done again, Darcy's links are all here in my show notes, so go check them out. He's got all these fantastic documentaries out there. We got to talk a little Bigfoot. You did some Bigfoot docs, right? And first of all, what's your take on Bigfoot? You a believer? You a knower? You a believer?
Yeah. So I thought I was crazy from exploring it. But I like things that are on the fringes of our reality. And the thing about Bigfoot, I think the strongest cases are some of the past cases. So the Patterson-Gimlin footage, that to me is a real traipsing around specimen of a non-human being. And I explored that footage and that story among other stories in Canada and the United States in the documentary I published called The Unwanted Sasquatch. That documentary was basically like saying, hey, look, this has to be a unacknowledged upright primate, basically, that lives in the wilderness throughout North America. And, in Canada, the word originated as Sasquatch, which was from a British man, and native Canadian tribes, Dehalis, which is in the British Columbia area on the West Coast. And in the United States in the 1950s, specifically 1952, it originated as Bigfoot because of what was happening in Northern California. Hey, Northern California borders, Oregon, and then into Washington State, and then up to British Columbia. So it seems like that whole Pacific range, the what do they call that mountain? Cascadia, could be home to this type of unacknowledged upright primate. We just have different names for it. So that really was my exploration in that documentary. I traveled out to Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum's laboratory in Idaho State University, and I think it's Pocatello, Idaho.
Yeah.
And what a brilliant man. He offered his, very scientific opinion on all this. And I made a documentary out of that with Bill Miller included, as well as who's now passed, and Thomas Steenberg, both local in Canada, where I was filming that in British Columbia. So the next documentary I did, which is called Sasquatch Among Wild Men, explored the idea that maybe multiple cultures around the world have experienced a upright primate type being that at once lived in wilderness all around the world. We're talking about places in the Middle East, like Iraq. We're talking about the Shenanjia National Rainforest in China. They call that one the Yeren. In Russia, they have the Almasty, or they even call the larger specimen a Yeti. And then you have the Yeti from the Himalayas, and all these tales of different cultures that have dealt with some upright primate that looks like a gorilla, but also walks like us sometimes and traipses around their forest areas. So, in Russia and around Eastern Europe, it's the Caucasus mountain region where many people have seen things. And again, I had Jeffrey Meldrum in that, but I also explored what these guys had found in Washington State, the Olympic Project guys, Shane Corson and Derek Randalls. This is going back. It's hard for me to even pull their names into my head, but
I do remember Shane. Yeah, great guys. The Olympic Project, their team is awesome.
Yeah, and like what they were finding with what looked like nesting kind of areas.
Yes, yep.
Right, and
we talked about that before.
What's interesting about that is there were stories that around Scorpion Creek, which is near where they found Patty, which is Bluff Creek in Northern California.
Yep.
Days before and days after, hunters and hikers and stuff were finding what looked like nested areas in that region, like these big sort of stick woven beds and stuff, which is what the Olympic Project guys found in Washington. And then if you go to China, the Yeren hunters have found nesting areas. So if you look at North America and you look at Asia, Eurasia, that was all connected, and Russia at one point through the Bering Land Bridge, the ice bridge in ancient times. We know that like mammoths and all kinds of animals could cross that way because it seemed like a land structure to them. It didn't seem like ocean. Now it's all ocean area. So we're cut off, but we do have wild cats in North America, like the puma or the cougar, which resemble, something like a lion. That's why we call it a mountain lion. And we have black bears, we have grizzly bears, brown bears, in that part of the world, Asia and Russia, they also have black bears and brown bears. So what if we had a relic hominid sort of upright ape-like being that existed in that part of the world that crossed over with that Bering, that land bridge,
Yep.
into North America with other fauna of the time, and then now they're separated.
Oh yeah, there's so many different avenues you can go with that, and I like that. And it's funny that all the we have all the different countries: the Yeren, the Yeti, Sasquatch, of course, Bigfoot, mostly United States. Do you think they're all the same? Do you think that Bigfoot is a Bigfoot is a Bigfoot, or do you think they're like human beings, different cultures, different races of them? Or do you think that do you just think that do you think that it's a flesh and blood creature, first of all?
Yeah, I think it's a flesh and blood creature because it leaves a footprint. It has hair, which we found hair samples around the footprints. And we have video and pictures. So usually that shows that something physically was there.
Yes.
I'm not, I've spoken with Ron Moorhead, and I know that there's a whole camp that goes into the sort of like paranormal Sasquatch thing.
Or the quantum mechanics, quantum physics of it.
They're basically saying Sasquatch can open portals and jump in and out, and that's not me. I'm not with that camp. I'm more, this is a flesh and blood creature that lives in deep wilderness. Sometimes we come across it because it's the master of that domain. We like to live in houses and closed structures to keep warm and so on and so forth. And these things are much more, muscular and probably physically equipped to traipse around that terrain than we are. So to me, it seems like just an unacknowledged a cryptid, an unacknowledged by science and mainstream ape-like being that lives in scarce populations, probably.
Probably in scarce populations, you would think. Do you think that, so you don't think there's any paranormal element? How, because we've all heard about the stories. Now, I know I talked to Ron many times, and he was a staunch advocate of it being just flesh and blood like 30 years ago. When I talked to him last, he thinks there's this quantum going on. And yeah, he even went as far as to tell me he thinks they might be alien in nature. With your documentaries, you've got 12, 15 documentaries, and you've researched and explored ufology, alien, cryptid life. We all hear these stories about a UFO lit up the skies in, let's say, some remote area of Maine or Pacific Northwest. Then lo and behold, there's a Sasquatch. Or there was orbs floating about at the ridge line or at the wood line. And then all of a sudden there's a Sasquatch. Do you have any thoughts as to why that is? Do you think that, and again, the far-fetched, what could be a far-fetched question? Do you think a Sasquatch was put here by aliens? Let's just, as an example.
Well, I don't think Sasquatch was put here by aliens because we do have a fossil record of Australopithecus, which is an ape-looking like man. We have a fossil record of Gigantopithecus, Blackie, which also, it's found in that Asia, Russia area. That could be a, acknowledgement of something we still see today. That's this, cryptid that existed in the fossil record, but we don't want to we don't want to admit that these things may still exist.
Sure.
When it comes to the UFO side of things, there are people that say cows have been mutilated or taken away from a pasture, like literally abducted, right?
Yeah, correct.
Are we now going to say that cows were put here by the UFOs? I would just say, in my opinion, maybe UFOs or a non-human intelligence that's observing our planet might be just as interested in these beings as they are humans. And maybe the reason why we got an opportunity to see that Bigfoot or Sasquatch at the time was because the UFOs were looking at it, and because our attention was in that area, we ended up coming across what they were looking at. That's just me.
No, that's cool. I mean, hey, again, that's why I do these shows, because I talk to so many people, and you do too. I mean, there's so many different theories, opinions, and I don't judge anybody's. I take the data. The thing about doing these shows and doing research and going out in the field, doing documentaries, it's all a big compilation of data, right? You see what matches, you see what doesn't match, you see what's more prevalent, right? And that's how we can come up with our thoughts or theories, and maybe about putting together other things, right? And one last question we didn't touch on, and just a brief, quick question when we talk about non-human intelligence and this alien life. Some suggest that aliens, and I got a little pushback the other night when I did the show with the MD, and it was suggested that perhaps aliens aren't aliens like an ET, like we all think about, but maybe it's just more non-human, but it's also a demonic force. What's your take on that really quick? We got about 3 minutes.
I think religious institutions have ruled the planet, and they have for, hundreds, thousands of years now. And when they view the phenomenon, people that come from that religious background, training, and worldview will identify the phenomenon with what they understand in their worldview.
I can go with that. This has been a great show, Darcy. Thank you so much. Darcy Weir is links I got posted in the chat. Where can we also find you if you'd like to go ahead and talk about where we can find you, what you got coming up, any upcoming documentaries, books, whatever you got going on? What do you got going on?
I'm working on stories all the time. I'm working on a few right now. I won't announce just what they are yet, but if people want to see my back catalog of films, they can search my name, Darcy Weir, on Amazon Prime, Tubi TV, Apple, multiple options, even YouTube movies. I have a bunch of those for free. It comes with some ads, but that's cool.
Of course.
Yeah. occultjourneys.com is my website. You can check out my whole catalog of films there. Click on the poster. It'll usually take you to a site to watch one of them. And most of the time I've linked it to something free.
Yeah.
And on social media, I know that we're connected on Twitter. My Twitter is at Occult Journeys. And on Instagram, I'm Darcy Weir Films. And you can find me on Facebook just by my name.
Awesome. Yeah, I do have most of those links in this description. If you want to later on, whatever, if you want to shoot me your actual link, and I can re-put it in the show for everybody, because I know a lot of people watch this over the weekend upcoming. That's where you get a lot of views during the weekend. Darcy, thank you so much for coming on in. If you're new here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Mystery and Rob. Hit that like button. And yes, please check out Darcy. It's been a while since I tried to get him on the show, and I thought it was a great show, and I could tell that the audience loved it as well. Thank you, Darcy Weir, for that. Maybe we'll do a part 2 in 6 months. How's that sound?
Sounds good, man. I
appreciate you. And so it was Darcy Weir. With that being said, today being Thursday, go check out. There's no Blondes and Boost. Saturday night, I got the girls. We're doing the late show with BMR. Into the Bazaar. I've got Monica, Krista, and Brandy joining me Saturday night, talking about the bizarre news, breaking news that we had over this past week. Thanks for that. Thanks to Darcy and everybody in the chat room. Until again, I'm BMR for Darcy Weir. Have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you.